jump in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday live stream. So today, we're just going to take a look at what's going on with the macro. We're going to take a look at the phrase that continues to prop up every single time I'm looking around, which is the Bitcoin Supercycle, why I don't buy it. And then we'll go over a couple of different bullish type of things. So before we get into it, as a reminder, I am still remain short-term bearish, but I buy Bitcoin every single day, even though today is actually a pretty good day to buy for me. I don't know about you. I can't give financial advice, but I mean, 87,000, not too bad. Now, will we see, I don't know, 70K, 50K, especially as Bank of Japan starts to raise rates on Friday? Well, it's anybody's guess, and there's no shortage of those. But for me, I'm just taking a look at it and saying, well, I think we can see some action here, and I'll hopefully buy as things keep going down. So Bitcoin price is the Bitcoin price. Let's talk a little bit about macro before we get into this Bitcoin super cycle and what's going on. This is from Bar Chart. Excellent source to follow. Check them out over at Bar Chart on X. Just in, it looks like the Federal Reserve just pumped $5.2 billion into the U.S. banking system through overnight repos. This is the 6th largest liquidity injection since COVID and surpassing the peak of the dot-com bubble. So overnight, the banks, they need money, they need liquidity, and they can go to the Fed and grab that, and the Fed will actually put liquidity back in, and last night they did $5.2 billion worth of it, so that's good. Now, if you read this by itself, you're like, wow, the 6th largest liquidity injection. That sounds like everything's going great, and we're seeing quantitative easing, and we're seeing all this money flowing into, well, not really quantitative easing, but we can see that, this is the good thing, what everybody talks about, liquidity, right? Well, yes, they are correct. That is the 6th largest for quite some time. But as a reminder, let me just, this goes back to 2021. We can go back, 10 years, and we can see that that's a blip of nothing back in the days of good old coronavirus time. And that's what we were dealing with all that time ago. But I mean, just for the sake of argument, let's zoom in here. This is what it was. And that was Monday, December 15th, $5.2 billion. But as a reminder, we had a $29.4 billion injection on Friday, October 31st. And what does that mean for our market? Well, as far as October, November goes, I think we were in the low 100s, 102, 103. Correct me in the comment section. It really didn't do a huge amount for us. But of course, everything is cumulative. That's great. But I'm just saying, just temper expectations just a little bit, because right now, when you're in the bear market, which I believe we are, doesn't matter the news, doesn't matter sometimes liquidity. Everybody's scared out of their mind. They think there's going to be an AI bubble. They think there's going to be a recession. There's no shortage of people talking about that. So these are the things that we get. We can take a look at these titles and say, well, that's great. But in all honesty, as far as liquidity goes, I mean, if we take a look at the M2 money supply globally and the US, we're at all-time high still. And we're still down 31% roughly from our all-time high, even though traditional markets are doing quite well. So that's one part of it. Second part, macro-wise, is jobs are weak. And it looks like from data that has come out, U.S. economy added 64,000 jobs in November, which is above the expectations of 50,000. This is from the Kobeshi letter. Also another great one to follow. Follow them at Kobeshi letter. And then it states unemployment rate rose to 4.6, above expectations of 4.5. So we've added some jobs, just that unfortunately unemployment actually raised at the same time. How is that possible? Well, you got people who are going back into the market. That could be one thing. Maybe people like that were disgruntled, and then they actually say, I'm going to try to get back in. That could be new graduates from different programs going into the markets, or a whole host of things. But we see that people who would be considered unemployed, and there's a time frame for that, went up a little bit, even though we added quite a few number of jobs. And then just to answer anybody's questions, these are jobs that people have filled. These are not just job openings per se. 64,000 jobs were filled. Sounds great, right? Well, somewhat. If we take a look at what the actual and the forecast and the previous was, as far as for the U.S. employment report, this was delayed, of course, because the government was shut down because they can't function, period. That's just my opinion. It looks like previous was 108,000, which is pretty good. And then the expectation was a measly 45,000 and pulled a rabbit out of the hat, got 64,000, pretty good. U.S. unemployment rate, we thought, hey, it'll be 4.5, went to 4.6. But as a reminder, it was 4.4 previously. So we went up 0.2%, not just 0.1. Again, it's all about expectations and going from there. But there's a silver lining to that, which is because the jobs reports are weak and unemployment is going up, that probably means that any kind of rate cut talks are looking pretty good because the economy is not doing so hot. So bad news is good news, and that's how it goes for the jobs report. And unfortunately, good news in some markets can't really move us in any way, shape, or form. And as a reminder, this Friday, we're supposed to get the decision from the Bank of Japan, I believe. And this could cause a shift in traditional markets and, of course, our markets, because ours is the only one, basically, that is open 24/7, 365. So look for a sell-off on Friday. Looks like that is going to happen. People are saying it's already priced in, and it could be. I'm not here to debate that part. I mean, let's see if it actually works out. But there's always going to be some people who are shocked, like this is really actually happening. The same thing that happens with every macro event. So we'll see what happens on Friday. But it is interesting, though. Bank of Japan, this is a nice little historical reference. Imagine being able to essentially get free money for loans in Japan for like 15 years. That's pretty nice. Because you can see here 2009 to roughly right before 2025, the discount rate or the loan rate, the rates were 0. And they put that up to 0.25 and 0.5, and people are lost their minds. And now we might go up another, 25 basis points, and people are like, the economy and the world is going to end. I don't believe that either, but we'll see what happens. But let's get into the main story, which is, the Supercycle. And I'm just going to say that I don't believe this is going to happen, but I was wrong before. I remember talking about a Bitcoin ETF never happening, and I was wrong on that one. But I just want to share some insights into this before everybody gets too joyous. This was from Bitcoin Magazine. Great publication, really good stuff. But of course, they're going to lean a little bit biased to they want this to happen. I can see why. Fidelity, pretty big institution, flags short-term crypto risk, discusses Bitcoin's historic 4-year cycle, and talks about how there's going to be a super cycle. This was actually a report that was put out about a couple weeks ago, I think. This was actually on November 28th, 2025. And it's interesting how much it's gained some traction. I see it all over X, but this is the truth. In the story, or in the report, it states crypto is no longer just a high beta trade for speculators. That part is true. It's a high alpha trade for institutions and hedge funds to manipulate the price and extrapolate a bunch of revenue from it. It is being treated as a strategic asset by governments, corporations, and institutional investors. And you know what? That is true. And if we can see here, Bitcoin Treasury Holdings, digital asset treasury is just for Bitcoin. This is actually from CoinGecko. I didn't know they actually had this, had to do a search. But I found it interesting, though, that you have all these companies, MicroStrategy, or Strategy being number one, then governments like United States, China, UK, acquiring Bitcoin, usually through seizures and things like that. And then you've got the Bitcoin mining operations. You've got the other institutions, Riot Platforms, Hut 8, another mining operation. Just a whole host of them. That's a lot. Look at that. This is liquidity, or this is buying pressure that we would not have gotten simultaneously years ago. So this is a good thing. However, the one thing that I see about this that kind of concerns me, see this thing right here where it says activity in the last 30 days? So if these companies have been buying Bitcoin over the last year or so, going back roughly a year, let's just do that real quick. 1 year ago from today, the Bitcoin price was 106,074 on December 16, 2024. During this time, how many do you think those are actually underwater? Because we only dipped down to the 80,000. Well, this one was, unless all these treasuries bought on April 8th at 76,000, I've got a feeling they're underwater for what they've been buying as far as for Bitcoin. Now, MicroStrategy or strategy, obviously not, they've been buying since 2020. But the new ones that have been buying over the year, I have to tell you, this is not looking good. And another thing that concerns me, because of activity in the last 30 days, the only one smart enough to figure this out is Strategy. Congratulations, Michael Saylor and the gang, buying roughly $1 billion worth of Bitcoin just yesterday. El Salvador, very smart country. Nayib Presidente Bukele doing great things over there. American Bitcoin picked up 416 Bitcoin. Oh, I think that's the Trump's son's company. Wonder how we got that information. Canaan, ANAP, and DDC Enterprise Limited. But all the rest of them have either sold, like Satsuma Tech, they sold 579. Exodus Movement sold 245 Bitcoin. And who else? Well, that's it. But one thing you'll notice, though, is that why aren't they buying now? This is the time to buy. When the price is going lower, you would think they'd be like, hey, maybe we could reduce our cost basis because we bought it at $108,000, $106,000. And today it's like at $86,000, $87,000. You would think they would figure that out, but I guess not. So that's the thing that concerns me. I wonder how many will actually sell off if they do it all. And again, it's anybody's guess, but I just find this quite a little bit concerning. So the question this article asked is Bitcoin's 4-year cycle over? And to get that answer, let's just go to the source for the actual report from Fidelity. And they make some good points. They state here, others believe we could be entering a super cycle. This is what Fidelity believes. This is what the investors that they talk to believe, that Bitcoin is going to enter a super cycle where the bull market continues for years into the future. And for reference, a super cycle in commodities in the 2000s spanned nearly a decade. And you know what? They're right. They're absolutely right. If you take a look at gold, when they first had its official spot ETF in 2004, what do you notice the price did? 2004, 5, 6, 7, then a little pullback, and then it keeps going up, 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 then quite a bit of a drop, I guess, for gold. This was probably in the 2008 timeframe when there was the Great Recession, although people wised up and said, hey, wait, this is a risk-off asset. We should probably buy a bunch of this, and they did. 2008, 9, 10, 11, and 12, and then a little bit down here after that. But again, because of the ETF in 2004, there was a super cycle for commodities. And I think there is a super cycle potentially going on right now for things like copper and silver, because you need those types of things for the hardware apparatus, for artificial intelligence and compute. So for them, it might be a pretty good time. But if we see historically about as far as ETFs and gold, great time, super cycle. Yes, absolutely. And when did Bitcoin get an ETF? 2024, roughly January. Correct me in the comments. So if that holds true, then they could be right. We could see an actual super cycle. I just don't think it's going to happen. Anyhow, Cooper's wrote this article or this report. Doesn't think these cycles are dead, as the fear and greed that create them hasn't magically disappeared. He notes that the 4-year cycle was to repeat, we would need to have already put in the all-time high of the cycle and continue into a full-blown bear market. Well, newsflash, Q4 2025 was the all-time high, 125K, roughly, maybe 126. That's usually confirmed with every single 4-year cycle. We've got 15 days, 16 maybe, no, 15, well, if you count today, 16 days until the end of the year. Unless we hit an all-time high before 2025 is over, the 4-year cycles are intact. What happens in Q1, Q2, I'll leave it to the geniuses to figure that out. But for me, 4-year cycles are still intact and we're still here. Anyhow, While the drawdown in November has so far been severe, he notes we may not know until 2026 whether it confirms a 4-year cycle. Very true. So this is the thing that confuses me about this article, which there's some good points here, makes a lot of sense, I can get it, but is there still time to buy Bitcoin? This makes no sense. He states, we continue to see a shift to an entirely new cohort and class of investors, and I think that will continue in 2026, probably talking about more institutional investors, more hedge funds. So take that as you were. He says, we've seen traditional money managers and investors begin to buy Bitcoin and other digital assets, but I think we've only scratched the surface in terms of the possible amount of money that can bring into this space. I apologize, that does make a lot of sense. But this doesn't. If you're hoping to capture gains in the short or medium term, I'm talking about buying Bitcoin, and he's talking about medium term, 4 to 5 years or less, he says, there's a chance you may be late, especially if this cycle ends up following historical precedent. I think they're wrong here. If you were going to buy, first of all, if you really believe that the 4-year cycles are going to happen, the best time to buy will probably be October 2026, because that's usually what happens. I personally am not doing that. I still believe in the 4-year cycles. I'm just continuing to dollar cost average, and I bought some today, as a matter of fact. But we do what's called dynamic DCA. As the price goes lower, we actually purchase more. But I would say that to combat this, what would have happened if everything is being equal and you bought Bitcoin on 4 years ago, December 16, 2021, and you bought $30 a day? Let's keep round numbers. You know how much you would have, how you would have done? Pretty damn good. If you had been $30 a day, first of all, you've been underwater for quite some time. Look at that. Look at that. You're down 45%, you loser. 38%, 20%, loser. Then all of a sudden, you know, like in about a year's time, some change, all of a sudden you're positive. You feel like a champion. This is the greatest feeling of all time. I'm the best investor. And then you come over here and you're like, man, I'm a genius. April 2nd, I'm up 133%. I invested 25,000. I have 58,000. All I have to do is produce $30 a day. Then you come over here and you feel like a genius. You invested 32,000. You almost tripled it at 107,000. And then you feel like a moron over here because you didn't sell anything and you didn't take profits like Rob was telling you to do in his nice little 5 rules. And then you're like, I don't need that because I'm the best of all time. And then at the very peak, you invested 41,000, you have 135,000. Pretty good. So look, this is all a little bit tongue-in-cheek type of thing. You're smart enough to figure this out. You know what to do, whatever that is. And I will just tell you that if you just did it like that, it'd been pretty good. Now, what if you would have done, which is what I might have been better doing, is just waiting until 1 year later and just saying, okay, well, the 4-year cycles work out and we got a really bad, crappy year and we're going to bottom around November. Well, let's just say that you just pick December. You say, okay, I'm going to wait. If you would have done it here and waited just 1 year and not done anything, which that's well within your rights. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to buy. You don't have to sell. You can just sit in your hands, do nothing. If you would have done that, actually, you would have done not as well as buying every day after you just got off the all-time high in December 2021. But if you just waited till December 2022, which is the worst or the lowest time frame, which is historically a good time to buy, you would have only been up 175% instead of 233%. Isn't that strange? Interesting, right? And that's at the peak. Of course, now here you're only up 90%, but you get the drift. So when they're talking about this, they say this is not a good time. I personally disagree with that. I think this is a good time. Whether that be doing what I do or just dollar cost average and doing nothing, you can do that. But I think it's a good time as we start to go down. Look, the theory still remains. As long as the government keeps printing money, which they're going to do, they debase the currency, which is the US dollar, and all countries do this. My thesis is that Bitcoin will win over time. And I got to finish this up. However, on a very long-term horizon, I personally do not think you can ever be fundamentally late to Bitcoin if you're thinking of it as a store of value. That's true. As long as its hard supply cap remains in place, I believe potentially every purchase of Bitcoin is putting your labor or savings into something that we won't lose value due to inflation resulting from government monetary policy, and that is 100% solid. Anyhow, that was just it. I just want to shed a little light on a report that I think got a little bit too much traction. Kind of go from there. So anyhow, let me know what you think about that in the comments section. And let's see, Sweet Papa Pillow says, this guy is talking BS. Well, Sweet, you can tell me how I'm doing that in the comments section. Love to talk to you about that. And lastly, altcoins. I always want to talk about something positive. Eric Balchuna says Bitwise just filed an amendment for its hyperliquid ETF. So for all the hyperliquid holders, I have a little bit of that, which added the 8A thing, the fees and the ticker. It usually means that launch is imminent. Stay tuned. That'd be great for all hyperliquid holders. Looks like they're going to do a spot ETF. And if that comes through, well, we'll see if people have the risk appetite to buy hyperliquid. And that's it for today. So look, like today's video, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing. Everything is time sensitive. Now let's go into a little Q&A and we'll answer all your questions. Go from there. All right. Don't ban him for saying he thinks I'm full of S. We're in America. Well, I'm in America. I don't know where you're at. Free speech. You can say whatever you want to. This isn't the UK, for Pete's sakes. Let's see. Rob, you are probably become the new inverse Kramer. So the super cycle is on. We will see. I will tell you this. People all poo-pooed the 4-year cycle, that everything was going to keep going higher. That didn't work out. So we'll see. And I think you mean bullish. That's it. Bro, crypto is not gold, so you can't compare that. Well, what is gold? I mean, it has utility, like, people wear it, looks nice. They can put it onto transistors, that's pretty good. Nice little utility piece there. But what is it for? Is it all for that solely, or is it a store of value? Well, if it's a store of value, and I think Bitcoin is also a store of value. I think people might call it gold 2.0. So in that regard, I can compare it to gold. And if that's the case, and there was a super cycle before, maybe there's one afterwards. I'm not saying there's going to be. I'm just saying I can go from there. Yeah, it's called free speech. Exactly. Yeah, the only thing I want you guys to delete, and thank you moderators, I appreciate you. The only thing I want you to delete is any scams, any spams, anything like that, any bots. But people that don't agree, they are welcome here. There's actually a lot of money to be in BS. I used to be a farmer. That's a great gig. Did you see Larry Fink on Paul Barone's network? People keep feeding the troll. I saw a snippet. I don't know what Larry Fink said. Do you believe in Ben Cohen? I mean, I know him. I'm pretty sure he exists. Let's see. Around 12-day schedule. Yes, we'll be doing the 12 days of Christmas, starting on Christmas. So we're doing a bunch of giveaways. It'll be great. We got people lined up from TANGEM and Coin Ledger, iTRUST, and some others. So it should be pretty good. Ivan on Tech will be part of the giveaway. Ben Cohen will actually be part of that. So yeah. Ben is the best crypto YouTuber. Well, I can agree with Kevin. He's one of the best ones. That's true. These other guys have gotten people so wrecked. Good thing I got out way early. Yeah, that is good. Let's see. What makes Bitcoin a store of value? What makes gold a store of value? It retains its value over time, correct? So some people will say that it's a great store of value at all times. I disagree with that. And why I disagree with that is because let's go back to El Salvador in 2021, when Bitcoin became legal tender. And President Bukele rolled out an app that allowed vendors to take Bitcoin as payment. And that worked out pretty good. Unfortunately, this was actually in 2022, when the valuation every month started to drop. So imagine that you are a vendor, you're in El Salvador, and you have the greatest store of value that you can imagine. And every month you lose 10%, 20%, and it only accelerates. So the amount that you had in, say, like January, February, now you're down 60, 70% over a year's time. Is that a great store of value? Well, people say yes, because if you hold it for a longer period of time, anybody who's held 4 years or more is in profit. That is a long-term store of value. That's very true. But for the people, the vendors that were using it, they were using it as payment, it would have been great for them to use it as a store of value. Unfortunately, when you have to, pay the bills and keep a roof over your head and pay for your kids to actually eat, not doing so great. For every $10 you make, now you only have $8 worth to spend. Or obviously it's El Salvador, so it's a different one. So as far as like a store of value, as long as it keeps the valuation of whatever it is over a specific amount of time, whether it be short or long, I consider it a store of value. And that's why gold's been so great, because it's been around since the beginning of the planet Earth. So that's it. And Conrezl said, because Saylor said so. No, Michael Saylor back in 2013, 2014, actually put out a tweet and said that Bitcoin will go the way of online gambling and is essentially worthless. Michael Saylor at one point didn't understand it either. So that's it. And remember, you can't make any more Bitcoin. It is finite at 21 million. Most of it's been mined already. And then to mine that and to actually keep the network up and running takes a massive amount of electricity and compute power. So if it's backed by that, there's the valuation, there's the store of value. Now, some people won't believe it. They say there's no store of value. But for those people, I will just direct them to a historical graph of the price of Bitcoin as time has gone on. And I also want you to take a look at the purchasing power of the US dollar and tell me if that is a fantastic store of value going back to, 20, 30 years or so. Let's see. And Kevin says, Bitcoin is not a store of value. These guys are lying. Kevin, yeah, obviously you don't think that's what it is. I don't know why you're on my channel. I don't know why you're here talking about it, unless you just want to debate somebody, I guess. But I still believe that Bitcoin is a store of value. If you think gold is a store of value, sure, you're right. It is a store of value. If you think copper is and precious metals, sure, I can see that. But as far as like Bitcoin is not a store of value, funny thing, I still believe it is. And hold on. Why don't I just do this? Let's take a look. So I guess, Kevin, the question I have for you is, what is considered a store of value for you? And because of that, real estate. Bitcoin and
Bobby. All right, I think that's the cue for me to dive in with a little bit of a take. So you laid out the whole store of value argument, and I'll just sprinkle in a little.
For example, I like real estate. It's one of my diversification as far as my portfolio. So let's say 2016, the average price of a house was how much? $288,000. Those are good times. I remember back before that, like 2000, it was below 200K. It was great. Unfortunately, as time goes on, you get to debase the currency, which is the US dollar, and that same house will cost $328,000. Now that same house is worth $434,000. Nothing's really changed. Maybe they did an upgrade here. Maybe they put in a new driveway. Maybe they did some solar panels, something like that. But it's not worth you know, $150,000, $170,000 more. However, if you take a look at Bitcoin, and all you had to do was just hold it, in 2016, it would take you 664 Bitcoin. In 2020, it only takes you 45, and in 2024, 6.6. And nowadays, it only takes you about, well, 5. So I think it's not too bad. Anyhow, spend a lot of time on this. Gold is for boomers. I'm not a boomer per se, but I still own some gold. Let's see. There's already real digital gold.
Bobby. Yeah, Rob,
Yeah,
I'll
so
jump
Larry
in.
says, Rob, when you were showing the DCA or wait a year to invest in Bitcoin again, was that the same amount of money either way? Because I would wait the year and invest more at a time. It was, let me take a look. It was the same amount of putting in $30 every single day. And really what you have to take a look at is the percentages gained. I think that's the bigger thing. So let's take a look at it again.
Bobby. All right, let me put it this way with a little Bobby.
Starting date is December 16th, 2021. Now, this is as a reminder, 1 month prior to this, on November 8th, I think it was, 2021, was the all-time high of around 67,000. So December, you know, you're a month out. You probably still have some pretty good aspirations for Bitcoin, and it's going to be a super cycle. I heard that back in 2021 too, and it wasn't. So anyhow, so let's say you put $30 a day, and you've invested, obviously since you've invested a year or longer, you put $30 in, you're up 220% as of October 7th. You're up 220%, you invested $41,000. Make sense? Let's try this. Let's just say you knew about the 4-year cycles. You're like, I'm gonna just wait 1 year from the high. Well, let's just say December 16th, which would have been November. In this situation, you're still putting in $30 a day, but you started on December 16, 2022, 1 year later. And then we come over here, you're only up 175%. But you invested less. You invested $30,780, and the value was $84,000. So you invested less. The returns aren't as great, and here we are. So like when I am thinking to myself, okay, well I can wait, but I'm like, why? Because I'm in a little bit of a quandary. Because when I think about this, I think maybe I am wrong. Maybe the banana zone people will be totally right, and Q2 will be the blow off top, and I'll miss all these sideways actions and this reduction in valuation of Bitcoin. I said, okay, well, I'll just dynamic dollar cost average. And as the price goes down, I buy a little more, and price goes up, I buy a little less. So if I'm wrong, I just have to put more money in, but in the end, I should do just fine. Should, unless Bitcoin goes to zero, like Dan Pena says. But we just took a look at it. 2022 was the low and still worked out pretty well. Anyhow, that's just the quandary that we're in. Maybe these people are right. Maybe there's going to be massive liquidity. Maybe they're totally wrong, and the 4-year cycle does continue, and we have a really bad bull or bear market in 2026, which I personally believe it will. I believe the price will go down more. We're in a midterm year, traditionally speaking. In the markets, it's never a good year for the midterm years, in between the presidential election. 2024 is presidential election. 2028 will be the next one. 2026 is the mid-year. Don't trust me. Go do your own research, and you'll see midterm years are the worst years for traditional markets, and also, coincidentally, for crypto. All right.
Bobby, and there.
Yeah. Well, Sweet Papa Pill is right. Copper and silver are going to be high value with all the data centers being constructed. Bitcoin is not a store of value. It goes down 59%. No. So over time, long-term store of value. And we're going to disagree on this one. I would rather own all of those. That'd be great. Like again, I own a little bit of gold, I own a little bit of Bitcoin, a little bit of real estate, a little bit of equities, I think it's just fine. It's a balanced portfolio, my opinion. But as far as like super cycle for commodities, like we see silver, copper, sure, I could see it. John Luis. Hi, Rob. Interested how Bitcoin and ETH both getting sold at the same time by exchanges. Is there a secret association and will be prohibited by the Clarity Act? I don't think that, you know, for these exchanges, maybe they can rein them in a little bit better. But, you know, when you have banks and BlackRock and those guys, I mean, they're the masters of manipulation. We're not going to rein them in because those guys pay for all our senators and House of Representatives. So for them to get around it, that's not going to happen. But they'll probably have a heyday with the centralized exchanges that are out right now. And that's why, you know, some of the people that are in the top spot of those exchanges are snuggling up to the people that are in charge of the current administration. All right.
Bobby. All right, Rob. I'll just drop one last little Bobby nugget
Turns
on
out
that.
Ben's AI, yeah. Oh, wow. I have to agree with them. El Pixel says, Larry Fink said the problem with Bitcoin is there are too many leveraged traders. He's absolutely right. I got to tell you, that's the thing I've been saying under my rules. One, it's all gone, meaning don't invest more than you can afford to lose. 100%, everything's a scam until proven otherwise. Don't leave things on exchanges. I think we all learned our lesson from Celsius, Voyager, BlockFi. And don't use leverage and take profits along the way. So what Pixel says about Larry Fink, yes, he is right. There are way too many leverage traders. And for some reason, I don't know where they're getting their money to do all this, but they're losing like crazy. And the only one that's actually coming out ahead is the exchanges when they get to liquidate them. I don't see how you can gamble that hard. One day is going to catch up. All right. Ben left his bunker and visited Hugh Grant in Dubai.
Bobby, and there it is, Rob. Just a little final thought from me. Honestly, it's the same old story. Too much leverage, and eventually somebody's going to lose the shirt off their back, and it's usually not the exchange.
Dark Energy says, hey, Rob, how are you enjoying working with James and company at the Best Answers DCA Live? Every so often, when the market is horrible, they ask me to come on. And that's it. I think it's like my second or third time back. And it's always good. I mean, I have got difference of opinions with some of those guys, but it's what makes the world go around. But yeah, wasn't bad. Remember that El Salvador also gave $50 of Bitcoin to every citizen to also help with cross-border payments from family members versus MoneyGram. That's true. Hopefully that went far.
Bobby. Yeah, absolutely, Rob. I'll just add a final little punchline here.
Con Brizzle says, so people believe Bitcoin will go up indefinitely? Well, since there's a very famous quote, I think it was Jeff Booth, since the amount of money printing will never stop, then Bitcoin will go up indefinitely. That's how it goes. So all you got to do is just take a look at it. What is finite? What is infinite? How much printing is going on? How much debasement is happening? What is the purchasing power of your preferred currency of your country? And how has that risen over time? Yeah. We'll see. Maybe we're all wrong.
Bobby. And there we go, Rob. That's the perfect closing note for
diminishing returns. Yeah, true. Bitcoin price over the last 16 years is a hockey stick. Yeah, somewhat, but Papa Pillow is right. It is diminishing returns. Although I will say, like an 8x or 7x or 8x from the low, what was it at? 17,600 and something in November of 2022 to the 125K in October. I'll take it. Where else can you do that? Unless you invested in NVIDIA a long time ago.
Bobby. Absolutely, Rob. And I'll just wrap it up by saying, sure, diminishing returns might be a thing, but if diminishing returns still mean a 7 or 8x on a bad day, well, I guess we can.
Bobby, what do you think about everything that you just heard today? Do you think that's a pretty good play, a good assessment, or no? Do you think, and also, do you think Bitcoin is a store of value? I guess that'd be the next big question.
Bobby, all right, Rob, since you got me in, here we go. First off, I think your assessment's got a lot of solid ground. You're basically playing the middle game, and that's a smart place to be when the macro's as messy as a toddler's finger painting. Now, is Bitcoin a store of value? Well, in Bobby's book, it's a long-term store of value with a side of adrenaline. It might be a bumpy ride, but as long as money printers go burr, Bitcoin's probably going to keep being that digital rock people want to hold. So yeah, I'd say you're making a pretty good case. And in the end, Bitcoin's still got a seat at the store of value table, just with a little more rock and roll.
So Bobby, let me ask you this. How would you play it? Would you do, because I know Larry Fink just from BlackRock, CEO, said that Bitcoin participants, there's too many leveraged traders like yourself. What would you say to Larry Fink?
Bobby, oh Rob, if I got a moment with Larry Fink, I'd probably flash him a big Bobby grin and say, hey Larry, you're absolutely right, leverage is a wild beast. And for me, Bobby's all about strapping on the seatbelt and not using leverage at all. So I tell Larry, look, I'm just here for the ride, no margin needed, and I'd wink and say, some of us like to keep it a little more sane, even if we sound a bit wild. So yeah, I'd let Larry know Bobby's not one of those leverage lunatics. And
all right, that was good. I got to give Bobby a new personality. All right, let's see what else we got. ChatGPT sounds like my Sarah trying to get a raise. Yeah, it's a work in progress. I'll make it work at some point. Yeah, well, this is just it. This is the good thing. See, now you know, it's not just, well, not trolls. I think it's people that either they're, like some people said that they already sold, so they must be very happy. I don't know why they're here, but sure. And some people are like, this is not a store of value, and they like to troll. And that's fine. I just don't agree with their opinion that Bitcoin is not a store of value. It only makes sense to me. Now, Peter Schiff will come on and say it's the worst thing of all time, and gold is the only way. Well, if you were listening to Schiffy back in 2012 and didn't buy any Bitcoin, when you could have picked it up for like $1, $2 or $3, yeah. So that's that. And of course, people say, well, it's not about that. It's about who's being right and is it a store of value? It is what we make it. It doesn't matter what one person says or one person believes. It's what the masses believe. And if the masses believe it's a store of value, then it is a store of value and it has value. So if I was to come out here, it'd be a very more difficult case if I said Bitcoin's a store of value, but it went from 125K to 50 cents. That would be a very difficult argument. But since everybody believes it's a store of value, then it's a store of value. So what is the issue here? I just don't get it. All right. Now I went to bed. You're welcome. Do you have multiple pools? I have multiple green screens, yes. Let's see. And let's leave it here. Zcash is trash. Okay, sounds good. Just kidding. If you invest in a Zcash, good luck to you. You probably did pretty well, but I don't have any. Yeah, that's it for today. Like today's video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. What we talk about is time sensitive. That's it for this one. Thanks so much, everybody. I appreciate you, and I'll see you on the next one. Adios.